Twice upon a time, a unicorn had entered Maritime Bay. The sun had set below the ocean. The dark of night had arrived, and so did she. That night, Argyle was at his desk in the lighthouse until he heard a knock at the door. When he opened it, he saw the local sheriff. "Good evening, Argyle." "Hello, why are you here?" "Argyle, we spotted a unicorn in the area. We may need your lighthouse to find the threat in the darkness." "A real unicorn? That's serious. I'm on my way to light the beacon," said Argyle as he hurried upstairs. "Thanks, Mr. Argyle," said the sheriff as he left. The beacon was on. Several sheriff teams were looking around the outer areas, and they had no luck as Argyle looked outside from the top. As the beacon twirled around, though, he could have sworn he saw something in the distance. At first, he thought it was nothing, but when the light turned around, he saw it again. It looked like a pony, but he knew he saw a horn on its head. The light turned around again, and this time he was sure he saw a unicorn. For real. "What is that?" he asked. He ran downstairs and outside the lighthouse and ran over to investigate the area where he saw the silhouette. Surprisingly, he had plenty of light down there. Both the lighthouse and the moon helped, but just then he saw something in the corner of his eye. And just then he heard something go, "Oh!" He immediately turned around and he saw it. An actual, real unicorn. Horn on its head and all. It had a coat of orange and a mane of light blue. "Ah! Unicorn attack! Help!" he screamed as he ran away. "Wait!" shouted the unicorn as she gave chase. He looked behind him to see the unicorn running after him. "Ah! Please don't fry my brains! Don't read my mind! Please, some pony help me! Ah!" Argyle screamed as he fell off of one of the cliff tops above the ocean below. As he fell to his doom, he suddenly stopped falling. "Ugh!" He looked down and screamed. "Ah!" Then he looked up to see the face of that same unicorn that was chasing him. She grabbed his tail and was pulling him up. "Wait, what?" said Argyle. He used his hind hooves to walk up the cliffs. The unicorn heaved and pulled until she finally got him back on the ground to safety. Argyle laid on the ground and sighed in relief. He got up and looked at the unicorn. "You saved my life. Why?" asked Argyle in confusion. Just suddenly, the unicorn started running away, and Argyle immediately gave chase. "Wait! I just want to talk! Stop!" Argyle shouted as she kept running until she accidentally tripped over a rock. "Ow!" She tumbled and hit the ground face first. Argyle's pace slowed to a walk. He walked over to the unicorn laying there in the grass. The unicorn looked around and saw his face. Hi?" said Argyle awkwardly. Immediately the unicorn started crying. She broke down into tears and she hid her face in her hooves. "Please, don't hurt me. I don't want to," she screamed before Argyle spoke. "Calm down. I'm not going to hurt you," he said as he laid down in front of her. "I just want to know why you saved me." She looked up at him again. She stopped crying. "Hey, are you okay?" asked Argyle with concern. The unicorn said nothing. "I promise I won't hurt you. I don't bite. I want to help you. Who are you?" Hi. I am Shining Star," she said shyly. Shining Star. Mm-hmm. Are you still hurt? Mm-hmm, she said with a frown. I live in that lighthouse over there, where no pony will see you. I can look at you there. He got up and held his hoof out to her. She shakingly stretched her hoof out to him, but she took it, and he helped her back to the lighthouse. Once inside, he saw where she tripped. The bottom of her left back hoof was swollen red. I've got a bandage here if you need that, said Argyle, opening a first aid kit. Thank you, but you don't have to do that. But I want to help. You're hurt, and I'm still helping you, he said softly as he bandaged her hoof up. Said Shining Star as the bandage wrapped around her hoof. She felt a calming sense of comfort as this earth pony helped her out. When he was finished, he sat beside her and smiled. I owe you for saving me, but why? I don't know. I just saw you about to fall, and I just did it. Even if you were going to hurt me, it just didn't feel right to let you fall. Why did you think I was going to hurt you? You're an earth pony. I was told earth ponies were unintelligent, aggressive brutes who mangled any pony that came their way. I was afraid. Argyle was a little saddened by that. But didn't you read my mind? Didn't you know I wasn't a threat and I wanted to help? Read your mind? With your magic? With your horn? My horn? Magical? No, my horn isn't really good for anything. Well, that explains why she couldn't light the way, because despite everything he had been told about unicorns, he knew that they could still light it up, but apparently they couldn't. You can't even levitate anything? Asked Argyle in confusion. No? That sounds fun, though, said Shining with a smile. Argyle was beside himself. All my life I was told unicorns could read your mind, or even worse, they could fry your brains, and do all kinds of awful things with magic. But how could you do that if you don't have magic? I wouldn't do that even if I did have magic, though. That sounds barbaric, and well, you're not a brute. You're actually really gentle. At least, that's what you showed me. Why would I want to fry such a kind pony? She smiled at Argyle. Maybe an unintelligible brute who chased you around a field that you thought would hurt you, said Argyle, smiling a goofy face. Shining Star giggled. Hey, thank you so much for the help, Mr. I didn't get your name. Argyle. Argyle Scout, he said with glee. Argyle Scout. Well, I'll be on my way now. I'm sure we'll see— Ow! Shining Star tried moving off the sofa, but her leg still hurt. You can't leave. It needs to heal. Shining Star thought about it, and he was right. Besides, where exactly was she going anyway? She had just met an earth pony that she never expected at all tonight. Was she really going to stay here? You're right. It'll be a while before I can move again. Can I stay here tonight? Of course, Argyle said as his eyes lit up. Shining smiled. And hey, Shining, thank you so much for saving my life. I cannot express how overwhelmingly relieved and grateful I feel, said Argyle, smiling at her. Well, you already are. Perhaps you're right. Now, let's get you to the guest bedroom. Just holler if you need anything, said Argyle as he helped her on her feet as he escorted her into the spare bedroom. Morning had arrived, and Argyle had woken up for the day, until suddenly he remembered something. Oh wait, the beacon! He ran upstairs and turned the beacon off. Then he went downstairs to check on his guest and patient. Knocking on the door of the spare room, she said, "Come in." "Hey there. Sleep well?" "Absolutely. It's been a while since I've slept in an actual bed, let alone one this comfortable." "Really?" asked Argyle, and she nodded yes. "Well, that's great. Oh, how's your hoof holding out?" "Well, it's better than yesterday, but I don't know if I can stand on it yet." "Oh, okay. Well, what kind of food you like?" asked Argyle with an awkward grin. "Oh, well, pancakes and tea mostly. I'm not that picky, especially now after I literally tried eating grass for a while," Shining said, smiling just as awkwardly. "Oh dear, okay, pancakes it is then." And Argyle ran to the kitchen. After he finished cooking up the pancakes, he walked into the room and placed the plate of pancakes and glass of tea on the nightstand. Before Argyle walked out, Shining quickly asked, "Hey, can you stay here?" "Okay, I've got pancakes for me too, just let me get them." "I might need your help if anything falls." "Good point," said Argyle, walking out to get his own pancake plate before they got cold. After the two ate breakfast, they sat in the room talking to each other about the events of last night, who they were and why. "So what brings you to Maritime Bay?" "Well, I didn't exactly want to stay home. It was honestly a really lonely place, and so I didn't want to stay there anymore. So I just traveled, not really knowing where I would end up, but it would have been better than home." "So, where is home?" "A forest called Bridalwood. It's where unicorns like me live, but every pony there is just depressing and lifeless. They're always sad and want to be left alone, and they're afraid of the word magic for some reason. Every time the word magic came up, unicorns usually do this weird ritual dance, so they don't get quote-unquote jinxed," explained Shining, holding her hooves up for the last part. "What in the world?" asked Argyle in confusion. "If you think it's weird, it's because, well, it is. It's actually kind of funny, and it's not just magic. It's also wing, feather, and mayonnaise for some reason." And then Shining just started laughing. And then Argyle started laughing. "Mayonnaise? Why?" Laughing further. "Oh no, I must not get randomly jinxed from the cursed, evil mayonnaise," said Argyle, laughing out loud, and that got Shining Star to laugh. "I know," she smiled. "But anyway, my point is unicorns are always afraid of something, so they're always sad and depressed that the worst could possibly happen. And when I grew up to move out on my own, things went well for a while, but the area I lived in didn't have any unicorns visiting. And well, they were always afraid of earth ponies and Pegasi too." This immediately got Argyle to think of how Maritime Bay handled fears of unicorns and Pegasi. But unlike Bridalwood, where that fear evolved into sadness, the fear in Maritime Bay evolved into anger. "Who told you earth ponies and Pegasi were dangerous?" "I forget. Unicorns aren't really talkative, so I knew, but I didn't really take it seriously over time, because it didn't look like any pony else did. The two thought for a few seconds. Here they were, a unicorn and an earth pony in the same house. Not a danger at all. It only made logical sense that the Pegasi were probably innocent too. So I left to make some friends, not knowing who those friends were going to be. So you just wandered aimlessly until you reached here? For 3 days. Oh, wow. You know, that's not exactly the best plan, even if you are trying to escape that. I know. I knew on day one this was a terrible idea. But hey, I found you, didn't I? And well, that's kinda why I chased you when you saw me last night. But when I saved you, I don't know. My own fear from Bridalwood must have finally caught up with me after finally seeing you were an earth pony. I understand. Really? Is it worse in Maritime Bay? Actually, yeah. You said the unicorns are so afraid that they barely talk about how dangerous we supposedly are, right? Yeah, said Shining with piqued curiosity. Well, here in Maritime Bay, we are afraid, but we're actually angrier at unicorns and Pegasi, if anything. And to be honest, I can't stand it. We talk about the dangers of unicorns and Pegasi all the time. Every time. It just doesn't stop. It never ever stops. Every pony screaming and shouting and yelling with no transition. We could be talking about anything else, but unicorns and Pegasi being the monsters of the world just always comes up. We literally develop weird gadgets and machines to stop them at our factory Cantor logic. Well, they failed. They made ponies angry, and they're prepared. Now they just never ever shut up about it. Argyle vented as he pouted. He looked at her and sighed. Sorry if that was a little scary. No, you just needed to let that out. Just like I let out my frustration to you, she said as she put her hoof on his back. Better? Yeah, a lot. I was just never able to say that to any pony because I was afraid if I did, everyone would think I was more accepting of unicorns and Pegasi. And it's amazing how I'm probably the only earth pony here that doesn't take that threat so seriously, because it makes me just as angry as everyone else. And so when I was old enough to move out, I moved out here in this lighthouse, outside of town, so I didn't have to hear it anymore. Suddenly his head collapsed onto the bed, and he sighed heavily. Oh, Argyle, there's that word again, afraid. But I get it. That's exactly how I felt in Bridalwood. She put her hoof on his head. I know. It's just so much, though. And it hasn't exactly been easy being alone either, said Argyle, picking himself back up. Shining smiled at him. For both of us. But how about we hate fear together? Argyle smiled back. You're right. Even if some pony comes here and you need to hide, I'm not really afraid of that. Thank you for hearing me out, Shining. Thank you too, Argyle. Shining grinned. And so, Argyle leaned in, wrapped his hooves around her, and gave her a hug. Argyle, what is this? Asked Shining in confused laughter. Wow, really? It's called a hug. It's just a sign of happiness, kind of like saying thank you or I'm appreciative. Shining couldn't deny this felt good. She felt great. She felt fuzzy inside, and she started giggling. Oh, I see. It feels amazing. Can I give you this hug, though? Anytime. We're friends now, aren't we? That's just what friends do. Shining wrapped her hooves around Argyle and returned the hug. Mm-hmm. Always friends, said Shining, closing her eyes. She never felt this amazing in her life, and it was just a simple gesture that no one else really gave her. The two hugged for quite a while. Throughout the rest of the day, Argyle Scout and Shining Star would just enjoy each other's company. Laughing, hugging, playing games, Shining drew a few pictures and Argyle showed her some of his favorite books. By the time night came, the two slept really well, thinking about each other. It seemed something beautiful was created that day. A beautiful, forbidden friendship was born. One week later, Argyle was in the guest bedroom, helping Shining literally get back on her feet. You can do it, okay? Are you ready to stand on it? Asked Argyle with his hoof around Shining's back. Yes, let's try it, said Shining, holding her hoof behind his back. She lowered her bandaged hoof to the ground and let go of Argyle, and her four hooves fell forward. Well, nothing was happening. Shining didn't feel the throbbing pain from before. It was perfectly fine now. It feels fine, said Shining, smiling. Argyle got off the bed and smiled. We did it. Yes, shouted Shining. She immediately undid the bandage and started dancing around the room, and then the rest of the house. Wait, hold on, Shining, asked Argyle as he chased her around the house. May I have this dance? Asked Argyle, bowing. Sure, I never danced with another pony before. She smiled and took his hoof, and they danced the day away. 1 month later, both Argyle and Shining were watching a movie together one night when they accidentally slept on the couch together. By that morning, both of them woke up with their heads back to each other. Are you awake? Asked Shining with her eyes still closed. Yeah, what an odd way to sleep. They woke up, looked at each other, and giggled. How about some classic Argyle-style pancakes and tea this morning? That works for me, said Argyle as he immediately walked over to the stove and started cooking, with Shining looking over his shoulder to watch and learn herself. It doesn't look that hard. You want to make the second one? Said Argyle, handing over the measuring cup. Oh, okay, I guess I'll try it, said Shining. You just pour it in the pan, right? Argyle nodded yep, and so she did. She poured it in perfectly just as the tea had finished brewing. The kettle was screaming. Oh, there's the tea, said Argyle as he got off the stove and turned the burner off, pouring both of them a glass. Okay, can you flip the pancakes? Grabbing a spatula and flipping one in the air perfectly and landing perfectly back in the pan. Oh dear, I don't know, she said with some concern. You don't have to flip it in the air, said Argyle as he handed the spatula over. And so she carefully placed it under the pancake and held it with the spatula. She looked at it intently, looking at the bottom for the golden brown. Just as the timer for the pancakes went off, that made Shining slightly jump. She ended up catapulting the pancake into the air, and its batter side landed right on top of the ceiling. Both of them looked up and saw the pancake above them, and they started laughing. I can't believe I just did that, she said, laughing. Just then, the pancake fell off the ceiling and landed perfectly in the pan, and both of them howled laughing. How did you even do that? I don't know, but now we need to clean the ceiling. After breakfast, Argyle immediately got to work cleaning the batter off the ceiling, while Shining was looking outside the window at the beautiful beach below. She wondered how the rest of the town was, wondering what it would really be like, even with Argyle's added details, both positive and negative. Furthermore, she loved having her face in the sun. Back in Bridalwood, she would step just outside her house just to catch a few rays from the trees. As she was in deep thought, Argyle stepped next to her and asked, "Want to go outside again? It's been a while." Shining frowned. "I know, but I know it's not really possible." "Well, I wouldn't really go as far as that. It is possible if we can hide your horn. No offense." "None taken. Honestly, I wish I didn't have this. It's completely useless. It causes more problems than benefits. I'm always afraid I'm going to poke you in the eye with it. And if I go outside, it would literally stick out like a stick in the mud," she said sadly. Argyle frowned and looked at her. "Don't say that. You're perfect with your horn. I could never imagine you without it," said Argyle empathetically. Shining sighed. "Thanks, Argyle, but I don't know." She placed her hoof on the windowsill and looked outward. Suddenly, Argyle had an idea. He walked over to his office coat hanger where he saw a single beret hat. It was dark blue, and it had a button you could detach from the hem piece to make it bigger. He took the hat and walked over to her. "We could try this," said Argyle, detaching the button from the hem piece. I guess we could try." And so Argyle placed it on her head, and her horn fit in perfectly. "Oh, wow." "What is it?" "Look," said Argyle as he got a mirror and showed it to Shining. She was impressed. "Oh, wow. I like how it contrasts greatly with the light blue of my mane." "And it looks the same as if you wore it thin ways," said Argyle, smiling. "What if some pony still finds out?" "Okay, I have a plan. I'll pretend to take cover from you, and you run back to the lighthouse as fast as you can and hide there until I get back." "Okay." "All right, Argyle, let's do this," said Shining with excitement. "The dynamic duo having a great Maritime Bay day," said Argyle, excited as he opened the door and the two of them headed out. The two walked along the main strip, and things were going well. No pony suspects anything. "Yes. So where are we headed?" "Cafe Maritime," said Argyle as he rounded the corner of the sheriff's office and walked towards a dockside cafe. The two walked inside the restaurant, waited in line, and got to the counter. "May I take your order?" asked the clerk. "I'd like a hay burger and some extra heated hay fries, and just water for the drink." "All right, and you're with him?" asked the clerk. "Yes, Shining trailed off, not exactly familiar with the food selection, so she figured, "I'll just have exactly what he's having." "All right, here's a buzzer." And he handed them a small device as the two walked out to a table in the dockside area. "How do you like it?" "This is amazing! It's right on the seaside with the sun right in your face with a gentle breeze. How do you even build this?" "This is perfect," said Shining, smiling enthusiastically. "That's right. You've never been here before. This must be new for you, right?" "New and amazing! I love it, Argyle, I love it," said Shining as the buzzer went off. Argyle went back inside and got lunch and went back to the table. After lunch, the two went down to the beach. "Woo! That was the best lunch ever!" "Wow, you're really coming out of your shell, aren't you?" asked Argyle. Shining sat down on a nearby rock on the sand. "I guess I am. I just love feeling this much sun. It's so warm, she said, smiling and giggling. It really is beautiful. I lived here my whole life, and I never really took the best days for granted, said Argyle, sitting down next to her, wrapping his hoof around her back. She wrapped her hoof around his. This day is magnificent, Argyle. Can we do today again? Said Shining, smiling with glee. Of course we can, Shining. You know, my life has honestly been so much better since you came along. Really? She said, looking at him. Yeah. When I first moved to the lighthouse, I was kinda like you. I was so shy and afraid to talk to every pony that I was hesitant to even talk to my own family. But when you came along, I felt like I made something of myself. I helped you and you became my friend. I found out all the lies I was told about unicorns and Pegasi were just that, lies. I broke out of my fear. I even learned things from you I wouldn't have even imagined. And I got your hoof back to health. Shining, you're just so interesting, cheery, bubbly, and lively. I guess that positive energy kind of impacted me for the best. I never had a friend like you. Shining looked at him, smiling with tears in her eyes. Argyle, thank you. She leaned in and hugged him. He returned the hug. If it helps, you've made my life better. I'm not afraid of earth ponies or Pegasi anymore, and I'm not really anxious about meeting ponies anymore either. And today you helped me find something new and old that I love. I don't feel afraid to be outside anymore, and you helped me stay happy when my hoof was hurt. You're so caring and kind, smart, knowledgeable, funny, and you just always know when to cheer me up. Thank you so much for healing my hoof back, Argyle. And well, I love the hat, said Shining, snuggling into him. I know, and I couldn't be happier knowing I mean that much to some pony. That was beautiful, Shining. I mean it. You're the best pony alive, Argyle. Thank you, Shining. And now Argyle was crying. The two snuggled for a good few minutes until they looked at each other and got off the rock, feeling better than ever. But when Shining stepped off, she landed on something that made a crackling noise. What was that? Shining looked under her hoof, and she saw a piece of paper under the rock. What is that? I don't know. But should we find out? Absolutely. Shining grinned, and so the two moved the rock out of the way. It took a lot of strength, but eventually they were able to roll the rock on its side and free the piece of paper. Before it flew off, Argyle grabbed it. What is it? I don't know. Let's get back to the lighthouse, said Argyle, and the two made their way back. Argyle put the paper on his desk, and the two looked at it intently. It had markings of a dotted line leading to an X. The map was drawn in the same way the beach's coastline was. This was only one thing. The two lit up with excitement as they both said, "It's a treasure map!" The next morning, the duo had a pair of shovels and a treasure map with only one goal: to find the real gold in an actual buried treasure in Maritime Bay itself. They followed the line all the way to the X marking the spot. The location was right next to a cave, and given that the north arrow on the map's compass pointed away from the coastline area, near a rugged area of rocks and caves, this has to be it. And he drew an X in the sand with his shovel. The two smiled at each other when Argyle said, "Dig in." And the two started digging deep into the sand. As they went further down, Shining Star hit something with her shovel. "I think I got it!" She dug around the area, and she hit it again. Argyle and Shining quickly got to work dusting it off. And there it was, wooden iron. curved into a chest. After they cleared the top off, they dug around it completely to get it out of the sand. Eventually, they uncovered the whole chest. What was odd, though, was that there weren't any locks, only 2 latches. And so they got to work lifting it out and carrying it back to the lighthouse. At the lighthouse, they opened the 2 latches and opened it together. They prepared themselves to look in the chest and saw 9 huge books. What in the world? Okay, not the most unusual thing to find in a treasure chest, asked Argyle in confusion. Shining looked at the book's spines in confusion. They all say friendship is magic with a volume number, so all 9 of these are volumes of this? Friendship is magic? Asked Argyle. He reached into the chest and picked up the first book. He flipped through the pages and read aloud what he found. Written by Twilight Sparkle. Look, here are the chapter titles. And there are 26 chapters? The 2 looked at each other in confusion. Well, I guess we gotta read it. And so Argyle turned the page to the first chapter and read it. Once upon a time, in the magical land of Equestria. Six months later. Both Argyle and Shining almost completed the first 3 books. They still had 1 chapter to read for Volume 3, though. They were both hooked on these fascinating tales involving Twilight Sparkle and her friends. Every weekend when they had the time, they would read as much as they could. The most fascinating part of this was whether or not these stories were true. So many questions surrounded them. When they first started, the question was, she was a unicorn? Even more baffling was the existence of magic. The books described both the heroes and villains using actual real magic. For years, Argyle was led to believe unicorns had magic. When he first met Shining Star, this was proven to be false. But the unicorns in the stories had it, so this proved that magic did used to exist, but how was it gone? Did it just not exist anymore? But even more baffling was that all 3 pony kinds lived together in harmony. The book had descriptions of a mixture of all 3 pony kinds living in the same world. The 6 friends were all different pony kinds, and yet they had such powerful magic through their friendship, they ended up saving the world several times over. And then, of course, there were the princesses, described to be alicorns. Alicorns? The description made it seem they were literally a mashup of all 3 pony kinds in one pony. And even more insane, they were basically immortal. That couldn't have been true, right? If they were immortal, then where were they now? And obviously, why were these books written? And why were they buried? These were all fascinating questions to answer to what an amazing series of stories was already. Whenever they were not reading, they were still doing well. Life was largely going well for them. But the most notable thing that would happen, little to the others' knowledge, they would start having a growing romance for each other. Tonight was a holiday called Harvest and Hugs Day. It was a day of a feast, celebrating how grateful and thankful you were to the special ponies in your life. Because the 2 still only really had each other, they decided to only spend it together. Shining Star quickly became a natural at cooking after she and Argyle prepared the meal. "The pie is done," shouted Shining as she opened the oven, and she took out the pie. "Whoa, that's beautiful." "Oh, absolutely. You know, I had so much fun with you putting this together. I think you created this new efficient style of cooking. Argyle smiled. I did too. You always manage to keep things fun. Shining smiled and blushed at his sentiments. You did too. You already know you kept me laughing. Like the time we spent shopping when I was sleep deprived? Shining chuckled, and Argyle was laughing his head off. Why did you want all the shoes in the store? Some of them weren't even your size. Argyle chuckled. And then Shining started laughing as she put the pie on the table. Didn't I want to ride in the grocery cart? She asked, laughing. You actually went in it, Argyle said, just laughing nonstop. After dinner, the two hugged each other close. They had gotten used to cuddling and hugging often, and whenever they wanted. As Argyle said, you should never be afraid to ask for a hug. They were snuggling and thinking about how wonderful the other was. Shining even occasionally snuggled into him like a cat. You want to read the last chapter of Book 3? Not tonight. I actually wanted to do something else by the beach. Race you to the beach? That sounds fun. And the air is perfect tonight, said Argyle in confirmation and excitement, and Shining booped Argyle's nose, which made him blush. At the beach, no pony else was out there, and the streetlights above as well as the moon made everything perfectly visible. Ready? Yeah. Which one of us will be the better Rainbow Dash? Asked Argyle ironically, and Shining booped his nose again. Maybe you. You know I'm more of a Twilight, Argyle, she said, grinning. Argyle blushed again, and her happy grin was just irresistible to look at. It was just so adorable, and it made him feel so fuzzy on the inside. Argyle stepped into position, and so did Shining. And just like that, the race had begun, and the two galloped away. As the two rushed along the beach, the two couldn't help but look at each other as they went along. You really think you can beat me? Well, Twilight won the race, right? Shining said, a reference to one of the stories in the first book. Argyle suddenly went faster until he suddenly disappeared. Wait, Argyle? Where'd you go? She looked up to see Argyle on the main walkway. Hey, no fair, said Shining, giving him a half-lidded look. Well, if I'm gonna be a flyer, I may as well be above the track, Argyle said, hanging his head over the walkway rail, until he fell over. Ah! Shouted Argyle. Shining immediately went under the walkway and Argyle landed on her back. Argyle couldn't help but laugh, though. What is it with you and saving my life? Asked Argyle with a grin. Oh, you'd be fine. It will be painful, but fine. I just saved you from falling again, said Shining with a chuckle. Argyle walked over to the shoreline and Shining followed, and the two walked together in a circle around each other. This is not a race. Argyle walked around in front of the moon, giving Shining the same half-lidded eye expression she was doing. No, but we still have to get back to the lighthouse, said Argyle, sitting down, Shining sitting next to him. As the waves of the water moved up towards their hooves, and the bright full moon right in front of them, giving a beautiful glistening effect to the water, they stared at each other and immediately looked away blushing. The moment was just too perfect. Both of them just couldn't deny how romantic it was, even if they didn't know. They literally read about this exact scenario in best-selling romance novels, and here it was happening right in front of them. And so Argyle spoke up. Have you been okay lately? Yeah, why? Well, I've just been kinda dealing with something that I don't know if I should take seriously. Hey, same. I mean, what do you mean? It's a bit of a blur, honestly. It's like something is telling me that I want this thing I really like. Anyways, I don't think it's a mind over matter or a head to heart conflict situation, as it is the same thing telling me to do it and not to do it at the same time. What about you? Well, you kinda took the words out of my mouth. I don't really know if it's normal to feel both excited and terrified at the same time. That doesn't mean I'm bipolar, right? No, not at all. I'm actually kind of feeling that way right now, said Argyle nervously. Shining pulled her hat down a bit further. I mean, imagine how I feel. I can't even show my face out here without wearing this thing, and I'm already anxious around other ponies. It's really like my mask covers my metaphorical mask. It makes me wonder if it could work, you know? Like, if I actually put myself out there, they would like me, even if I was a unicorn, right? And things would be correct for me to live here? Asked Shining nervously. I wish. I don't mean to get off topic, but it's because I don't want you to get hurt. If I get hurt somehow, and that's what I'm afraid of. My heart is telling me to go for this thing, but my head shows me reality and how dangerous that reality could be. Or if I even really want it as much as I say I do, it's just a simple question of, is it worth it? But it doesn't have an easy answer. It's, well, you understand, right? Said Shining, shaking. Yeah, I do, said Argyle, sighing. He and Shining sat up and walked back to the lighthouse before the walking turned into running. Why are we running? Said Shining, smiling. I don't know. Our race ended, right? Said Argyle, smiling back. Yeah, well, it's back on then, said Shining, galloping and cheering. Yeah, I do too. Woohoo! Shouted Argyle. I feel so free! The two ran as fast as they could back to the lighthouse before crashing into the front room door, panting. So, is that a tie? Sure. Why not? Said Shining, walking over to the couch. When Argyle closed the door, he asked, So, you want to read that last chapter? Sure, said Shining as she got the book out. Volume 3, Chapter 13, Magical Mystery Cure. Argyle and Shining finished up Book 3, and the last chapter blew their minds. What in the... This has to be fictional, right? He immediately closed the book. Each book had its volume title with a circle that had illustrations of the cutie marks of the 6 ponies in the book, with a logo in the center that said, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, and at the bottom, written by Twilight Sparkle. So, she's a unicorn turned alicorn princess now? The two wondered. 1 month later. After finishing the 3rd book, they continued to read through Book 4, and they finished in less than a month, mostly because they were so invested in it to call it their favorite. And soon they started on Book 5 and went through half of it, until they had to stop due to Winter Wish Day approaching. Both Argyle and Shining originally wanted to stay at home together like last time, maybe continue their research on the books and investigate them further, as they had been doing that while they were reading, until a letter arrived. To Argyle Starshine Scout, you are invited to the Maritime Bay Wish Day Gala, a festive event held at the Cantor Logic Pavilion. The event will include a play along with a party afterwards where ponies can promptly dance the night away. Signed, Cantorlogic CEO. Happy Winter Wish Day. Additional note for Argyle. Your friend is also invited. Argyle looked over at Shining. I know you don't do well in crowds. I don't either, so I'm only going if you are. Plus, you would need me anyway. So, you want to go? Shining Star was on the couch drawing a pencil sketch of Twilight Sparkle, with the body stretched out, to help her and Argyle to better understand what she looked like as an alicorn. She looked over at Argyle, sighed, and told him, Actually, it doesn't sound bad, and I'm tempted to see whatever this play is. I'm sure ponies are curious about me. That letter proves it. Maybe this is how I get out there. You don't want them to get too curious, though. I know you walked along the strip and beach just fine even with other ponies around. I was there for all of it. And well, you kinda built my confidence for that too. Shining put a hoof over her mouth. Oh, Argyle, thank you. She put the drawing down and hugged him. Actually, thank you. Shining Star, I honestly adore you. And that's why I'm worried. Shining blushed. I know. We've been over this. What do you think ponies think of me now, though? After all, we've been reading these books. Aren't you curious about how ponykind became so divided? Maybe we could gain some insight, not just on what every pony thinks of unicorns and pegasi, but who these ponies are. And could these ponies let that negativity go because of who they are? Argyle sighed. You're really smart. You know that? It's not a guarantee, but you're onto something. Something tells me we're only at the beginning of this mystery. Shining thought about it and laid back on the sofa. Okay, then. Yes, I'll go. And thanks for the compliment. It always makes me feel important somehow. You're important to me either way. I just hope I can be just as important for you, said Argyle, blushing, knowing the answer. Of course you are. You're going to be my +1 for a reason. And look, it's going to be more bearable with you. I know that for a fact. Shining was blushing. She said, springing off the sofa with glee. Argyle sprung up too. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what it is, but we just seem to have this thing where we relate to each other a lot, and through those insecurities, we just let them go at the same time. In other words, we really are the best things that ever happened to each other, said Argyle, tapping his hoof. Why are you dancing? Look who's talking. In no time at all, Shining and Argyle was dancing and sliding across the room. I really need to finish that drawing, said Shining, chuckling. That night, the two went to their rooms for the night. Shining was still a little bit jumpy. She was going to attend an actual dance and play with Argyle. She jumped around, squeeing. Yes, yes, yes! Imagine if I held his hoof at the play. This is going to be the night of our lives! She squealed. Argyle was also getting ready for bed, and he couldn't wait to do these things with Shining tomorrow. Well, look at you. You're going to a gala with her. Oh, her, the one, the only Shining Star, the best mare in Equestria ever, he said, smiling in a mirror. Argyle dance-walked to the bed, excited. Ah, Miss Shining Star, may I have this dance? He said, holding out his hoof as he laid into his bed, falling asleep. His confidence was reassured and his worries lifted. Eventually, Shining was asleep too. Both dreamed about holding each other in their hooves on the dance floor. The next day, Winter Wish Day. Argyle opened the door. Ready? Shining was prancing out of the lighthouse. More than ever! And they closed the door. On the strip, both Shining and Argyle were dance-walking towards Canner Logic, cheering as they went. Soon they made it to the pavilion door, and after showing the invitation, they went inside and saw the crowd of ponies in their seats in front of a stage. After finding their seats, they sat patiently for the show to begin. Then, it happened. The show started. After the performance was over, the party was escorted to the second auditorium, where a variety of food and tables were set up, with a large dance floor in the middle. As they had said, they started asking around to hear what other ponies had to say about Pegasi and unicorns. Among their responses, "Well, I heard there was a big fight and several earth ponies were injured. I would like a crab to be my friend too, but that's an unrealistic expectation." Why would you bring that up now? We're at a party. We're already prepared if that happens. Look, I'm scared enough. I'll only let it out if a unicorn is staring me in the face. If you're Argyle's research assistant, why shouldn't you know? Nothing good has come from a Pegasus, period. If you can tell me with definitive proof that the unicorn that showed up here came here to not fry our brains, I'll pay you 1,200 bits for it. The Big War told me exactly why they are both dangerous, even if they didn't hurt any pony. Don't you have an assistant now, Argyle? You both should probably already know, if you're researching the history behind our enemies. Long wings, a horn on its head, what else could be more uncanny to look at? Do you know how uncomfortable it is to have your mind read? I'm allergic to regular feathers, so why would I care? We were always afraid because if we're afraid, we're ready to prepare ourselves for the threat. We try not to be so calm even when we have the situation under control because we don't want our enemies to get the better of us. After many different responses from the crowd, Argyle and Shining stepped out to talk it over. Well, you were right. These guys have no issues bringing up unicorns and Pegasi, except for a few. Yeah, but even if they didn't want to talk about it, they seemed more comfortable talking about how afraid they were, if anything else, said Argyle with a pout. We're gonna need a history book. I think we should ask one pony together, though. She pointed over to a pony with a pink coat and a massive blonde mane. No, not her. Why? That's Phyllis Cloverleaf. As soon as she talks about the dangers of unicorns and Pegasi, she never ever stops. Okay, well, how long do you think she'll be talking? Argyle sighed and said, I don't know. She complains about everything. She is just never happy. She's so delighted in bringing ponies down, she may as well be hopeless. I have no idea how she ended up with that stallion a while back. Shining looked over at Argyle. Well, we should still ask. And she walked over. Argyle sighed in annoyance and followed her back inside. And they struck up a conversation. Ah, Argyle, how are you? And who's this? Hello, Phyllis. This is my research assistant and lighthouse assistant, Shining Star, said Argyle, pouting. Not that Phyllis really noticed. Shining Star, well, hello there. You're almost perfectly dressed, but that hat seems really out of place for you. I can show you a different kind of hat if you're tired of that one. said Phyllis, looking over at Shining's hat as Phyllis flicked it with her hoof. Argyle and Shining tensed up at that, and they inadvertently held each other's hooves in concern, and they never let go for the rest of the conversation. Yes, well, nice to meet you too. So, well, me and Argyle were curious. Do you know why unicorns and Pegasi are so bad and threatening? Asked Shining nervously. Oh, please. You don't even need to read the history books to understand that. Unicorns have magic. Actual, real magic. They could read your mind or worse, fry them up. They don't even need to do that. They could burn you to a crisp, crush you from the inside, freeze you in a block of ice, bury you underground with no way to get out. They could even make you blind or deaf. Nothing to a unicorn at all. That is just their nature. Oh, and the Pegasi. Oh boy, they have wings that could take you away and drop you down in seconds. I even heard rumors that they could move clouds. Who's to say they couldn't move storm clouds and make them into a hurricane? Phyllis explained her quite frankly exaggerated points. Argyle's mind simply went blank while Shining thought internally. Doesn't take magic for me to read your mind, genius. And who exactly told you this, Phyllis? Oh, well, I mostly told that to myself, but I was mostly told by my parents. Their motto was also this: be scared so that you can be prepared. And that's exactly what I'm going to use for my slogan in the election. This finally perked Argyle's attention. Election? Yes, I'm running for president of Canner Logic. And boy, do I have a lot of things to show off. If I win, unicorns and Pegasi will never hurt Maritime Bay again. Between you and me, I think there's something else going on with those savages that I think Maritime Bay needs to know, said Phyllis intently. What is it? I think the unicorns and Pegasi eat earth ponies, Phyllis said, shaking a little. Argyle and Shining were absolutely shocked and said a unified, "What?" Phyllis smiled as she explained further. Think about it. Why does a unicorn fry an earth pony's brains? To cook them. Why do the Pegasi take earth ponies away, never to be seen again? They're hunting for food. Argyle and Shining were taken aback. I mean, did you hear about that unicorn sighting that happened a while back? Argyle held Shining's hoof tighter. Argyle spoke. Phyllis, that was 8 months ago. Oh, maybe. But you see that? They're laying low. They'll come back when we least expect it. I'm honestly shocked that you turned out okay since then, Argyle. It was right by your lighthouse. That unicorn could have ate you, said Phyllis with concern. Shining held Argyle's hoof closer. Well, Phyllis, It could have jumped through your window and got you. Phyllis, you could have been that unicorn's dinner. It could have cooked you, and then it could have eaten you, or worse, said Phyllis, getting more exaggerated. Phyllis, said Argyle, trying to get her attention. If I knew a unicorn would try to hurt any pony here, I would have done anything at all for that pony to get justice. Phyllis, I understand it. I already got my compensation, though, shouted Argyle angrily. Oh, you did? Okay, good, said Phyllis, relieved. Suddenly Shining let go of Argyle's hoof and looked at him. I need to step out, she said, walking outside. I do too. This was insightful, Phyllis. We will take this under advisement. Vote for me. See ya, Karen Leaf, said Argyle, walking away. Phyllis didn't even hear the insult, though. Outside, Shining sat down on the hillside the Canterlogic building was on, and Argyle walked by, shaking. As soon as he sat down next to her, the two started panting and breathing heavily. Shining was whimpering, and Argyle screamed, "Jeez, that was close!" And Shining was crying. Argyle moved over and held her close, which made her stop crying and calmed her down. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have talked to her." "I know, but look at it like this. We at least know why even she is afraid. Not only does it help her election results, but she also thinks that's just what you need to do to fit in Earth Pony society," Argyle explained nervously. "So you agree?" "Yes. But we were so lucky that she didn't take that hat off. We were not in control of that conversation at all." Shining slumped into his hooves, shaking and panting. Argyle's hooves were shaking. He picked up one of them and said, "Look at this, Shining. Look at this." "At least we learned a lot." "Yeah, maybe it's because someone hates themselves. Or they were just raised that way, right?" Argyle and Shining sighed. "We need a walk." Argyle blushed and asked, "Walk away from the fear?" "Yeah," said Shining, standing up and offering her hoof to Argyle, who promptly took it as the two walked into the night, starting to calm down with every step. Later that night they reached the other side of the bay and were in a vast valley with the town below. "Now we know something, right? You think maybe you're calm enough to process it?" Shining sighed as she leaned into him. "Maybe tomorrow. Right now, I just want to dance." "Here?" "Yeah." Shining smiled and stood up. "May I have this dance?" said Shining, holding her hoof out to Argyle. Argyle blushed and looked into her eyes as he took her hoof. As the two started dancing, Argyle couldn't help but laugh. "You beat me to it. I was going to ask you to dance." "Oh, stop. You would have been too nervous. Besides, you technically already did," said Shining smugly. "I did? Oh, right, when your leg got out of that bandage." "Yeah, remember what we did? Just hold me. I'll hold you and hold each other's hoofs together like this," said Shining in a soft, comforting tone. Argyle was speechless. Shining was tying his heart in knots for months, and she wasn't even trying. And Argyle's nerves calmed down, blushing as he looked at her. "Just look at me. Dance from the heart." She placed her hoof on his heart. "And I'll join in," she said, giving a look of reassurance. Just as her excitement and joy came back, she blushed and stared into Argyle's eyes. Her heart was beating almost as fast as his. And she was right. Argyle held Shining close, and Shining held her hoof up to his. The two were quite literally lost in each other's eyes, as their amazing dance brought them closer and calmer together, not afraid to show signs of how much the two felt for each other, even if they didn't know it yet. They could have lived in this romantic dream forever, as they leaned in and hugged each other, closing their eyes as their heads rested on each other's shoulders. All the while, the soothing steps of their dance took them to who knows where, while they were literally dancing in the moonlight. When suddenly something incredible happened. A shooting star went across the sky over them. They stopped dancing, opened their eyes, and looked with wide-eyed wonder. "What is that?" "That's the wishing star. It passes over Maritime Bay every winter wish day," said Argyle, stepping back. "Oh, it's pretty." "And look, when it passes out into the bay beyond," said Argyle, pointing to the star. And in a blast of bright light, the star stopped and made a beautiful 8-pointed star in the sky with rainbows surrounding it. "Now that really is a shining star." "Yeah, you are," said Argyle, making Shining blush again, when suddenly her hoof slipped. "Ah!" The two stepped so far back they reached the cliffside above the water. Argyle looked over when suddenly he fell off, and Shining immediately grabbed his tail. "Ah!" screamed Argyle. Shining tried to pull him back to safety this time, but it was no use. There wasn't anything for Argyle to grab onto, and so she lost her grip and he fell into the water. "No!" shouted Shining, and she immediately jumped in after him. Suddenly they fell far enough to hold each other's hooves and hugged each other to save them from the impact, and the two fell in the water.